Hi again and welcome back to my place. My name is Martin Wiese and in today's video I want to walk you through my latest demo track, Watch Your Back. This piece features several of the outstandingly beautiful Cinematique instruments and especially the brand new Vertigo Flute. The idea behind Watch Your Back was to create a noir style piece of music, and we're gonna have an in-depth look at this track right now. Have some fun! Before getting into detail, let me tell you a few things about the idea behind this demo. Cinematique instruments are radically individual character instruments. We are not talking about classical instruments trying to mimic the original or some kind of who does the best copy of a certain drum set kind of thing. Cinematique instruments want to be different. They want to be radically cinematic, full of emotion and character. Noir is a style that easily comes up when you think in those categories. Noir-style music is per cliché connected to the radically emotional tenor saxophone, which more or less big band or musical orchestra context around it. Interesting about this is that, for me, especially this saxophone has always been the killer element in a very negative sense. I hated it simply. Sorry guys, but that's the truth. I really liked the emotion and sound of the iconic noir soundtracks, but please, without this dinosaur roaring kind of saxophone. So what I try to do here is not to mimic or copy a sound or style, but doing my way of noir that is possible with the samples I picked up from the Steinberg universe. Which brings me to the point, the session. You see that I've broken down the arrangement into 3 subfolders. Rhythm section over here, Cinematique Instruments below that, and Iconica down here, which contains all of the orchestral additions to the track. But before we get too specific, let's have a listen to the track in the first place. Let's start our journey with the rhythm section, the center of the groove, and specifically the bass. The bass sound is a combination of this beautiful Cinematique Instruments Guitar Harmonics Essential and electric bass, which I've been using in several other demo tracks too. Let's listen to the two in solo mode. I created this sound as a basis of the whole atmosphere of the track. And I've done it in a way that may suit you as radical or completely mad, but this technique is often used when it comes to widen up sounds. I've combined two sounds of a different character and separated them via panning to get a wide and moody bass that sounds noir but still is very present in the mix. All the mood is coming from the guitar harmonics library that I actually used in the bass range. So isn't that a cool sound? And it is all behind these few knobs here. You have attack and decay as a rudimentary envelope. You can activate or deactivate rotary and cabinet over here. You can toggle in the tone, and last not least add delay or reverb. I love the cabinet and rotary, which gives the sound this extremely cool, spooky, retro and noir feel. Let's check this out. Without the cabinet, cool too, but with it, and let's check out the rotary too. Really does the trick, right? Let's check out the tone. I liked it exactly that way. Little bit of the church reverb and quarter delay. These versatile and extremely minimalistic macro pages are a real time saver when you are on a tight schedule, and that's one of the key features of all Cinematique instrument libraries. They are what they are, not even trying to hide beneath tons and tons of tweaking options. As you can easily hear, this sound is coming from the right side of the stereo field. All the punch and attack comes from the electric bass library on the left side of the stereo field. Interesting is that only the dry DI signal is used, without any ambience or reverb. As I said, all of the mood and space and emotion is coming from the guitar harmonics layer. I chose the J bass pickup, used the sustain pick articulation, and blues as the player simulation. As simple as that. To handle dynamics and to give the sound a little bit of crunch, I EQ'd the sound by taking out some of the mid frequencies at around 420 Hz, lifted the higher frequencies with a shelf EQ, and added some tube compression, as you can see here. Let's take the time and listen to the bass with and without effects, and with and without the guitar harmonics layer. What you can hear is that the bass gets more grip and clearness, which helps him stand out in the mix without dominating everything. Let's have a look at the complete mix from the beginning. The rhythm section is completed with the drums in the center and the piano in the background. I chose the marvelous Simon Phillips jazz drums for this track because it perfectly fits the sound needs of this setting. A modern but still jazzy interpretation of drums with extremely high flexibility. I don't get too much into detail here, but just for you to see that I just took the vintage funky kit and then played the groove via the keys. The only little addition I did to the sound was dialing in some tube drive on the kit mix to make the sound a smooth little bit crispier and punchier. Let's have a brief look at how bass and drums work together. The piano is the upright model from the Grand 3. I've dragged it a little bit to the right on the virtual stage, as you can see under ambience here, and added some large hall dark from the algorithmic reverb section. I reduced the room size to 49% and set the mix level to 49.5%. Together with the so-called radio effect EQ settings here, I achieved this retro piano feel I wanted for this track. Let's listen to the rhythm section as a whole. With this really characterful section in the back, the ground is set for our lovely Cinematique Instruments, especially the brand new Vertigo Flute, which I'm showing you right now. Let's head over to the last part of the track where the flute is in the lead. Again, you see the extremely intuitive macro with several mixer faders, but only a few knobs to tweak the sound. But most of the magic happens within these fader groups here. Regular, which covers the classic flute sound in 2 solo modes and 1 ensemble character. Let me just spot the ensemble here too. Fragile has a more airy and spooky sound to it. Let's spot that too. Here's the solo one. Taped is a quite unairy version of the flute. Which covers just the mere tone or tonal aspect of the flute. Avant-garde is a section with some aleatoric and experimental sounds in it. I really like this distortion version. We still have some kind of moving over here. Ensemble version. And the good old flutter tongue. Resampled is, as the name indicates, a resampled version of some of the original samples, like Voc over here. Vocal sound and the pan. I think it relates back to the pan flute. Really nice. Pit. Yeah. Definitely need that one. And blow over here is, again, as the name indicates, the blowing sound of the flute. With a little bit of tonal aspect, but really the focus on the blow side. And the ensemble version. And here again is my version that I chose for this track. My lead flute here is a fragile one with some blow additions, the distortion layer from the avant-garde group, Voc and Pan from Resampled, and a little bit of tone from the B solo regular fader. Attack and Decay I've said quite long because I wanted a smooth and tired character for this track, like the good old inspector in his worn-out trench coat slandering through the spooky night of Chicago. Interesting about the concept of this instrument is that its dynamics are controlled via velocity and not through complex dynamic crossfading like in many other classical libraries. And it simply works, as you could have heard just during my demonstration. It's like having a strange flute under your fingertips. That was very fascinating for me because for years I've been used to dynamic crossfading and extreme authentic legatos and stuff like that, and all of that is needed here. You can just write the faders and play. A really cool aspect of all Cinematique instrument libraries. Of course, I did some little phrasing things via volume automation, as you can see down here. What kind of strange things you can achieve with Vertigo Flute you can see with Vertigo Flute effects in the section before. You can see that you have total control over the tuning and semitones on every fader, which again gives you endless combinations and possibilities to shape your sound. In this case, I wanted a disturbing high register cluster sound. As a last example, let's have a look at the initial flute phrase at the beginning. It's a reduced version of the lead flute, but with a beautiful character of its own. The Vertigo violin is the perfect counterpart to the flute in this track. You can easily see that the two instruments' architecture is the same. We have fragile, sul-ponticello, which is a special bowing of a string player directing the bow more towards the bridge of the instrument, resulting in a thin and glassy sound. Harmonics, motion, effects, and resynthesized. For the violin in this track, I wanted a crispy and rough version, so I focused on the fragile and sul-pont side, adding a little bit of the resynthesized fragile sound. Let's have a listen to the violin, then violin and flute combined, and again in the whole mix. During the second half of the first main part, you already may have recognized the solo trumpet joining violin and flute. It's taken from the Iconica sections and players, and I really love the vibe of this instrument. It covers the feel of the good old mafia movies, but together with the two cinematic instruments, it becomes something unique. Let's listen to this second half with all three layers. Interesting is that flute and violin play one octave higher than the trumpet, so that the trumpet has a chance to stand out with sonority and character without dominating too much. Important to mention is that I didn't add any additional reverb. I've just used the close and tree mics here. The reason I did that was to get an idea of the drier and more distinct sound of popular orchestras, and an additional reverb would have made it too epic and big to my ears. I also wanted to have only orchestral additions to the track, while all of the emotion and space comes from the Cinematique Instruments. Let's now head over to the remaining instruments of the Cinematique Instruments range here. Alto Glockenspiel, Vertigo Strings, Marimba, and guitar harmonics again, but used as a solo sound this time. Vertigo Strings is an adorable string pad library which is so much fun to play with because it's radically musical and radically cinematic without sounding boring after a few minutes. Let's check that out. Isn't that fucking beautiful? We've talked about the fader layer concept earlier, so it's just the same here, just for a string ensemble. The guitar harmonic sound is the same used as my bass layer, but played in the upper ranges to get a solo guitar-like sound. All of the four instruments you can hear within the context starting from bar 9. Amazing what happens when muting the Vertigo strings, right? These sounds are that important for the vibe and the feel of a track, but they aren't ever realized by most of the listeners. Sad for Vertigo strings, but good for you to know. The orchestral editions only consist of some short articulations like staccatos and marcatos from the low and high brass, staccato, spiccato and pizzicato from the strings, and the staccatos from the low woodwind section. Most recognizable is the brass section making some strong statements in the low range. Let's have a look at the motif before the first main part. As you can see, all of these statements are doubled in the string section or even together with the woodwind. I'm just using a combination of staccatissimo and marcato for the brass to give the very last note some extra strong impact. You can see that here by the key switch. The strings only add bass and body. Let's listen to it once again. Let's have a look at the second half of the first main part again. Here you can see broken down what the orchestra does. The higher strings support harmony and groove through the chords played in this rhythmic pattern. The low strings double that with the bass notes, and brass and woodwind only add this rising counterpoint over here as an answer to the melody. When listening to the orchestra in solo mode, you can hear all of the musical parameters represented. But with everything else added, you hear that all orchestra stuff apart from the brass moves far back, just supporting the groove. The same brass motif appears in the middle part again at bar 38, but this time with a longer note at the end. I achieved that by using a tremolo in the low strings combined with a simple sustain in the brass. The rising notes are layered with brass strings and wood, and you can now hear the magic of this combination mixing all of the cool sonic aspects of each instrument family together. One last little thing I wanted to mention is the marimba strings combination that is very commonly used not only in film music. It's a really beautiful combination, pointing out the woody aspect of the marimba and the ensemble pluck aspect of the pizzicato. As we are already approaching the end of this video, let's have a brief look at the remaining effect sounds coming from the Vertigo Violin library. I've used the Uneven Star preset coming along with Vertigo Violin and just shortened the decay to get a sharper end because I wanted to create a rising effect with a precise ending. The dynamics are supported via volume automation. The same thing happening at the beginning at the end of the intro part. Okay folks, here we are again at the very end of this walkthrough video. I hope that I've given you some insight on this demo track. As usual, I try to cover a variety of aspects from in-depth looks at library instruments over mixing, composing and instrumentation, so that you might get an idea of that all of these aspects are connected when working with sampled instruments inside a DAW. I wish you all the best. Have some fun creating your very own noir piece of music, and seeing you all again next time. Bye bye.